Let's transition and let's go to Kansas City as the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Miami Dolphins 26-7. For the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, he went 20 of 39. He threw for 199 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Tyreek Hill had 5 receptions for 62 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. For the Chiefs, just another day at the office in the playoffs for Patrick Mahomes. He goes 23 of 41. He threw for 262 passing yards, 1 touchdown. And Rashee Rice for the Chiefs had 8 receptions, 130 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. So, the Dolphins-Chiefs matchup, this was Saturday night in Kansas City, and it was cold. And so it was I think they said it was the 4th coldest NFL game in NFL history. And so for me, my biggest takeaway from the game was it was cold and it was clear that the Kansas City Chiefs were ready to play football, and the Miami Dolphins, they were wishing they were still back down in South Beach in Miami. I mean, I'm watching this game and I'm thinking to myself, the Chiefs are ready to play football like it's 75 or 80 degrees outside, and the Miami Dolphins, they're struggling to adapt to how cold it is, and they don't want to be out there. I don't know if y'all got that takeaway or that feeling while you was watching the Dolphins-Chiefs game Saturday night, but I'm thinking they don't want to be out there. The Dolphins don't want any parts of playing in this game, and it was obvious for me. And so I felt like the Chiefs had control majority of the game, and they pretty much dominated the game start to finish, and they had the advantage in a lot of major statistics in this game. A lot of major statistics in this game the Chiefs had over the Dolphins. The Chiefs had more first downs than the Dolphins. The Chiefs had more rushing yards than the Dolphins. The Chiefs had more passing yards than the Dolphins. Obviously, they had more total yards than the Dolphins. They had more sacks than the Dolphins, and they dominated time of possession as well. So for me, I felt like the weather played a part in this matchup to some degree. Like, I just feel like the Dolphins, they didn't want any part of playing in this football game, and it was obvious. But another thing that was obvious for me, and I feel like it's something that the Miami Dolphins have to consider moving forward, I don't believe that Tua Tagovailoa will ever win a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Therefore, I don't believe the Miami Dolphins will ever win a Super Bowl with Tua Tagovailoa as their franchise quarterback. I'm looking at Tua Tagovailoa, and I'm looking at his numbers this season in the first half of games and in the second half of games. In the first half, Tua Tagovailoa, he has, this is in each game, obviously. This is this season. In the first half of games, Tua, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. In the second half, only 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. In the first half, he completes 73% of his passes. In the second half, he completes 65% of his passes. In the first half of games, his passer rating is 112. In the second half, it's 85. So I'm looking at Tua Tagovailoa numbers this year. This year, he had 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 4,624 passing yards, completing 69% of his passes. His 29 touchdown passes, those were the most touchdown passes so far that he's had in his career. in his 4-year career, those 29 touchdown passes are the most he's ever had. And so he had arguably his best season of his career. But when I look at Tua Tagovailoa, to me, he's a game manager at best. I never really felt like Tua Tagovailoa was on the level of a CJ Stroud. Hell, the way Jordan Love is playing right now, he's not even on Jordan Love's level. I don't feel like he's as good as Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, for sure. He's not even in that stratosphere. But I just don't even – I feel like Dak Prescott, he's better than Tua is, even though Dak struggled. I'm going to talk about the Cowboys and Packers a little bit later on in the show. But Dak is better than Tua is. And so for me, I feel like if you're the Miami Dolphins organization and Tua wants to get paid like he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, I would seriously consider moving off of Tua and going and drafting me a quarterback if I am the Miami Dolphins. Yes, in the last 2 years, in the 2022 and 2023, while Mike McDaniel has been the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Tua has had 2 good seasons. He has. But I remember when Brian Flores, he's the former head coach in Miami. Remember, Brian Flores, he didn't believe in Tua. There were times in the early part of Tua's career while in Miami, there were times where Ryan Fitzpatrick, yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick would have to finish football games for the Miami Dolphins because Brian Flores did not trust Tua to finish games. And remember, Brian Flores was interested in Deshaun Watson. The Miami Dolphins organization, they were interested in Tom Brady before he went to Tampa Bay. So I don't even know if the Miami Dolphins organization 100% believes in Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know. Now they're saying the right things. I heard after the season they're interested in giving him a contract extension, but I don't believe the Miami Dolphins will ever win a Super Bowl with Tua as their franchise quarterback. And I feel like the reason why Tua has had the success that he's had is because of Mike McDaniel, and also in that offense, the way Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle runs with the football, you could throw the football to Waddle or Hill, and they could take a 5-yard slant and take it the distance. And so I just don't believe in Tua. And the thing is, he doesn't play well in inclement weather. And in the AFC, you got to be able to play well in inclement weather. You're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going up against the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Buffalo Bills. So you got to be able to play well in inclement weather. If he's not in the confines, in Miami, in South Beach, then Tua struggles. He struggles. And so I just don't believe in Tua as a franchise quarterback who you could win a Super Bowl with. Also, for the last 2 years, as great as Mike McDaniel has been as the Miami Dolphins head coach, the Dolphins have not played well when it has mattered the most. In September through November, the Miami Dolphins, they're 16-6. So they win 73% of their games. In December and January, they are 4-10, which means they win 29% of their games. So they don't play well in December and January when it matters the most. And I believe in Mike McDaniel as a head coach, but I just look at the Dolphins as they're pretenders. They're not true contenders in the AFC. I think Buffalo's better than Miami. I think Kansas City is better than Miami. Obviously, Baltimore is better. And I think the Bengals and the Browns will be better than Miami moving forward. I just don't believe in the Miami Dolphins. I don't. I think they are one of those football teams. They are a finesse football team, and they want to throw the football all around the yard. but they're not a football team that's a physical football team in my eyes. And so this year, they beat up on a lot of inferior football teams this season. But when they went up against elite competition, they didn't play well. They didn't play well. And I know I'm making this all about the Dolphins because we know what the Kansas City Chiefs are about. We know what they're about. But I look at the Dolphins' schedule this year and what they did. They beat the Chargers in week 1. They beat the Patriots in week 2. They hung 70 on the Denver Broncos. Week 4, they got blown out by the Buffalo Bills. Week 7, they got beat by the Philadelphia Eagles. And at that time, the Philadelphia Eagles were a different version than the version that ended the season. So they got beat by the Eagles in week 7. Week 9, they lost to the Chiefs. I believe that game was in Germany. They lost 21-14. Okay. Week 16, they barely beat the Cowboys, but we know the Cowboys are also pretenders. So I just don't believe in the Dolphins. But when it comes to the Chiefs, I want to say this. It was just another day at the office for Patrick Mahomes. And I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes, and in the postseason, Patrick Mahomes has 36 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. He has a record in the postseason of 12-3. He has 4,346 passing yards, completing 67% of his passes. So it was just another day at the office for Patrick Mahomes. I'm interested to see Mahomes next week because next weekend Mahomes is in Buffalo. And we've seen Mahomes play majority of the season. We've seen Mahomes majority of his career, play at Arrowhead. So this year, he's going to Buffalo, and I want to see how the Chiefs respond under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid playing on the road in the playoffs. It's going to be interesting to see. But, again, I thought for the Chiefs, them having success throwing the football with Rashee Rice, and remember, all season long, we've been wondering who's going to step up and be that true number one receiver who Mahomes can rely on in critical moments in the playoffs. And in the first game, it was Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice, 8 receptions, 130 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. It has to be somebody else other than Travis Kelce. It can't just be Travis Kelce in the passing game. And Rashee Rice stepped up in a big, big way for the Chiefs. And so the Chiefs, they're heading to Buffalo next weekend. And that's gonna be interesting. I'm very excited about that. And one more thing, real quick, on Rashee Rice. Since week 12, Rashee Rice has the 3rd most receptions in the NFL. Only CeeDee Lamb with 61 and Evan Ingram with 55 have had more receptions than Rashee Rice since week 12. So he's definitely elevated his game, and he's becoming that number one receiver that the Chiefs desperately need to go on a Super Bowl run. So that's definitely impressive for him. And also another thing, Patrick Mahomes, now with his 10 home playoff win, he tied Joe Montana and Peyton Manning with 10 home playoff wins in his career. So shout out to Patrick Mahomes. Shout out to the Chiefs. They're moving on to the divisional round of the playoffs.